You look for what creates the meaning in your life, and I can't tell any one individual what that is.
Sure.
All I'm
Mhm.
saying is when you're there, you know it. And if you
Yeah.
can't, if you're still having like, oh, is this I can't do that, whatever, then you're not there. You haven't found
Yeah.
what's meaningful. And I guarantee you that for millennia, people have discovered that that's the one true search in life is the search for meaning. And you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes looking for it. I know I sure did with my thirst for violence and physical adventure. Uh, but there are all kinds of other ways. And again, take stock of the physical characteristics that you've got, because, like you said, it's a way of pointing you, perhaps suggesting to you something you might be doing, either in the middle of your current profession or doing it as a volunteer or doing it differently. You start
Hmm.
looking for meaning, and man, it'll take you in some weird places, and you light up. You light up when you find it.
Most people spend their lives trying to avoid risk. Today's guest has spent his life running toward it. From revolutions to avalanches to life or death decisions across the world, he's learned something most people never do. It's not the risks you take, it's what you take those risks for. Welcome back to the Perpetual Growth Podcast, the show where we explore the strategies, insights, and stories that help you to grow your business, strengthen your relationships, and elevate your life. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. Before we dive in, if you're getting value from the show, follow, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a review. It helps us continue bringing on world-class guests. Today's guest has lived a life that most people only read about. John Graham is a former U.S. Foreign Service officer, global speaker, author, and lifelong adventurer who has worked in revolutions, conflict zones, and high-stakes environments across the world. He's dodged avalanches, navigated geopolitical crises, and spent decades helping people step into courage and meaningful action. He's also the executive director of the Giraffe Heroes Project, a global movement that recognizes individuals who stick their necks out for the greater good. John's work centers around a powerful idea that a meaningful life isn't found in comfort, it's found in service, courage, and action. Today, we're going to talk about what real courage actually looks like, how to navigate risk and uncertainty, why meaningful matters more than safety, and how to live a life that actually makes a difference. John, welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast.
Wow, after that introduction, I'm looking forward to it a lot too.
Now, John, you've lived a life most people can't even imagine. So, I mean, I want to start here with you. I mean, what does growth mean to you now after everything that you've experienced?
Growth means continuing to take risks until they put me in a pine box, or as I have in my will, take my ashes to the top of Mount Rainier and dump them in a crevasse. It means taking risks, to continue to look at new frontiers, new ways of helping make the world a better place.
Hmm. I love that. That's beautiful. That mirrors my personal ethos in so many ways, and it really extends even to the same values that I teach my kids on a daily basis. I mean, to me, it's the fundamental difference between the way the vast majority of people have been conditioned to lead their lives and how they do lead their lives versus the few that take the fork in the road. It's the difference between in my mind's eye, a life of a mediocrity and average and comfortable and pursuing a life by your own design. I mean, how has that definition of growth changed for you from when you were younger, taking risks in those early days, early risks?
Well, it was a type of risk. I found out early on that what was turning me on was physical risk, dangerous risk, sometimes violent risk.
Hmm.
And it didn't start that way. I mean, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, which is a pretty placid place, and I grew up in a pretty ordinary family. No one ever took a risk in my family, and I was expected to grow up and marry the girl next door, have some kids, and die. I mean, that's what people did. And then it so happened, and it's a longer story, but that when I was just 17, I mean, a weekend of my 17th, after my 17th birthday, I had a job working on a ship, a cargo ship, going to the Far East for the summer. Now, a cargo ship in those days, of course, were not containers. We're talking late 1950s. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
83 years old. I'm old as dirt. Uh, so I found myself working on this cargo ship, and they were run by 50 or 60 really tough guys with tattoos and muscles and stuff, and it was so different. And the very first night we were sailing from San Francisco, some crewman out on deck approaches me, makes a sexual advance, and another guy, a big black guy from the engine room named Roy. He grabs this guy, slams him up against the bulkhead, beats the shit out of him, and then cusses at him in just a magnificent. I'd never heard cussing like that in my life. I'd never seen violence like that in my life. And then Roy throws this guy down around on the deck. So I go back to my cabin that night and I practiced doing what Roy had done because I'd never even seen it, let alone done it. I mean, I practiced slamming someone up against the wall and beating the shit out of him, and I practiced trying to cuss like Roy was cussing because I finally realized that that's what real men did. So part of the answer to your question is a search for manhood, at least in my case. And I didn't find manhood in Tacoma, Washington. I mean, I love my dad. He was a nice guy, but he was very placid, and he got constantly outmaneuvered or shoved around by all the people in his business, newspapers. Uh,
Mm.
and he was no role model at all. And I was being terribly bullied in middle school and high school. And I was just desperate. I was just really
Mm.
unhappy. And then all of a sudden, I'm in the deck of this freighter with this guy named Roy beating the shit out of someone. I said, that's it. That's what I want to be. I want to be like Roy. And so the rest of that summer was fantastic. I mean, these 50, 60 guys, they took one look at me, my background, and they said, "Man, you got some life lessons we're going to teach you in this summer."
Yeah.
This being a family broadcast, I won't be explicit what some of those life lessons were, but man, it was something. Being in a cargo ship, and Terry and the pirate sort of situation, roaming around the Far East and the Philippines and Hong Kong and all the rest of it. And I saw that the world was not Tacoma, Washington. It was huge, bright, colorful, full of adventure and full of risk. And it was a totally different life for me. And
Mm.
I resolved that that's the life that I wanted. And sure enough, within 2 years further on, I was hitchhiking in Europe. And I see this notice in the newspaper in the youth hostel in Switzerland that there's a war going on just south in a place called Algeria, where a bunch of rebels were trying to take the country away from the French colonialists. And I said, "Oh, I never been in a war before. I got to do that." So I hitchhiked down to Morocco, walked across the border because there's a war. There's no border controls. But at least I was smart enough to take a small American flag and tape it or tie it to my shirt so that the rebels wouldn't shoot me thinking I was French. So I shouldn't have worried. I mean, the rebels were great. I mean, they just thought what I was doing was absolutely crazy, and they loved it. And they would stop cars going in my direction at gunpoint and tell the driver to take me wherever I wanted to go. Uh, and I was on both sides too. I stayed for a couple of days with the French Foreign Legionnaires, and they were kind of like the people on that ship. I mean, they were big, tough guys. People don't join the French Foreign Legion because they're mild-mannered wusses. No, they're big, tough guys. And so I spent a couple of days with them, watching them trying to hold off a whole rebel army with a couple of pistols and a shotgun. And it's like, oh man. So my whole life was oriented toward physical risk. And that's where I want to start the story because that's what I did. Now, as you know, I'm sure from your own life, when you're young, when you're 16, 17, yeah, risk is good. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, your brain isn't fully formed yet, so you take risks. But you grow out of it. You get to college and you grow out of that, you get a job, maybe you get married. But that you look back at that as, oh yeah, I did that as a teenager. Well, I didn't stop doing it. I was doing it all through my 20s. I started mountain climbing, for example, with the Harvard Mountaineering Club. And we made the first direct ascent of one of the most fearsome and highest mountain walls on the planet, higher top to bottom than anything on Mount Everest. And no one had ever done it because it was so friggin' dangerous. Avalanches coming down all the time, rock falls, crevasses. It took us 35, 36 days to do it, but we did it. And it was one risk after the other, including almost drowning in the McKinley River on the way out. But it totally convinced me of a second point, namely that physical risks were great because I was invulnerable. I would never be killed doing that. Now, again, you might think that when you're 17, but man, I was in my mid-20s then. And so I had a life set out for me of nothing but physical risks. Trouble is, I had to pay for it. I wasn't independently wealthy. So I decided, well, I'll join the Foreign Service. So I took all the exams and joined the Foreign Service, and I told them I don't want to go to embassies in Europe and wear fancy clothes. I want to continue my adventuring, and they looked at me like I was nuts, but then proceeded to do that. So I found myself in the middle of the revolution in Libya when Muammar Gaddafi came to power. I mean, it was crazy. I loved it. I mean, the rest of the people in the embassy were freaking out because of the cars burning in the public square or rock throwing mobs. I mean, it was a revolution, right?
Hmm.
And I just loved it. I was in the right place at the right time. And I was also really good at my job because I was big and strong and tough, and apparently fearless. And so the State Department took one look at that and says, "Hey, we need a guy like that." Sent me to Vietnam. I'm going to stop here because I've been talking to, but the real change in my life happened in Vietnam during a fearsome battle over there.
John, wow. I there's so much to unpack there. I mean, one, we could share some stories. I was born and raised in Bellingham, just a couple hours north of you, and 30 minutes from the Canadian border. So I know Tacoma all too well. The Tacoma of today, I'm sure, is very different than the Tacoma that you grew up in. Are you still in the area in Washington?
Yeah, I'm on Whidbey Island, so you also know
Oh,
where that
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, very much so, very much so. Yeah. I left the state about 4 years ago for the first time in my life. I had traveled quite a bit outside of that, but finally made the move. I've been chasing sun. Now, that aside, you said something that really, really stood out to me. And I do not want to glaze past it because I would love to dive into so many of the stories that you shared. But you said something about how what you were really searching for was the search for manhood. And that
is.
is a very, very important principle and in a very unique and also potentially controversial conversation in today's world, in particular, because that has become a very convoluted conversation. I would love to hear your perspective. What does that mean for you, and how would you define that today, for at least for yourself? And there's no right or
Oh,
wrong here. I want your genuine, God's honest opinion.
wow, this is a whole other podcast, Zach. I mean, I tell you,
That's what I was thinking, but
I'll
I
try.
can't help it.
I'll try. Yeah, okay, okay. Look, the thing is, I was looking for manhood with John Wayne as my model, or
Mhm.
Roy, the black guy on the ship, or these
Yep.
French Foreign Legionnaires, or whatever. That's what
Hmm.
real men were. They were big and they were
Hmm.
tough and they were violent.
Hmm.
And what I had done was like taking a big piece of heavy plywood and hammered it over my heart because emoting was what women did. I mean, this is a common story, right? Emoting,
Right.
crying, and feeling and heart stuff was what women did. So I
Hmm.
closed that off completely. I was gradually becoming a monster. It was one thing to exercise youthful exuberance, but when the Foreign Service, especially when I got to places where I had responsibilities and revolutions and wars, people were dying, living and
Hmm.
dying because of decisions I was making. And it was like I didn't get how shallow that was. All I cared about was the adventure. So,
Hmm.
the manhood thing, I took a very wrong turn on that, making John Wayne and Roy my models, and I
Hmm.
didn't get out of it until I saw the shallowness of that life again in a battle in Vietnam, and I gradually came back and understood. thanks to what they then called encounter groups in California. State Department sent me there to California as a reward, I guess, for not getting killed in a very difficult, dangerous place in Vietnam. Um, and it wasn't just PTSD. I had a heavy dose of that as well. I mean, I'd walk on the shadow sides of the streets in Palo Alto to avoid sniper fire. Uh,
Mhm.
but it was like trying to find out who I was. I finally understood, and it was a huge revelation. And it was the lowest point of my life to realize that I had become a monster. My life had become so shallow. The only thing that mattered to me was the adrenaline rush. And that's what I thought manhood was, a steady dose of adrenaline rush, being a tough guy, women falling all over you, beating up other men. I mean, being in one difficult situation. And since I discovered that I was invulnerable, I kept wading into one difficult situation, one dangerous situation after the other, because that's where I thought life was about. But in California, in an encounter group, I learned from some people in that group, and I thank them to this day, that all of us have two parts, the female part and the male part. I guess the psychologists call it animus and anima. Anyway, female and male part. And a full human being of either gender has to exercise some of both. And I was entirely on one side.
Mhm.
I was suppressing the female, the anima, the compassion, the heart stuff, and in doing that, I was making myself, like I said, into a monster. I didn't have any friends. I was a tough guy. People feared me, and they obeyed me, and they but out of fear, not out of anything else. And I had to change that, and I had to see that I could become a different human being, and I did. It took me years. It took me years, Zach, but I gradually crawled out of that self-centered hole, and I found that being a man was being tough and compassionate. That being a man was knowing the right things to do in dangerous situations, and at the same time understanding the feelings of other people, understanding their wants and their needs, understanding that what I was seeing out there in the world in terms of violence and poverty and disease, these weren't just things to wade into because it was another way to exercise my manhood. These were problems to be solved. And because I was tough and because I was smart, I could do that. And I oriented my life toward that, bringing the female part into that life so that I could use my toughness. And believe me, no one messed with me. People still don't mess with me. I'm a really tough guy, but I'm a very compassionate guy. And I look back, I look now at my life in the last 40 years, 45 years or so, and realize that the things I'm proudest about, things that I really remember most, or not climbing mountain walls so much, but doing things like helping end apartheid in South Africa when I worked at the United Nations. So, long answer to your question. Again, man, we could go all day on this because I've written articles and it's a good part of my books. And so, yeah. But it's manhood is about finding that balance in your life. And you find it, as you intimated, and we can talk more about this, you find it by looking deep into what's meaningful in your life. What's meaningful
Mhm.
in your life? And what I found that being John Wayne wasn't meaningful at all. Adrenaline
Mhm.
rushes weren't that meaningful. What was meaningful was helping people, was giving back, was
Mhm.
realizing that I just saved a life or solved a difficult public problem,
Mhm.
and then going on to the next problem and trying to solve it as well. That's what
Yeah.
it was about.
Yeah, I love that, John, and thank you for both your vulnerability, your utter transparency in every context. I mean, I say it all the time, and I'm a firm believer that in today's world, particularly as men, vulnerability is actually a superpower when it's showcased appropriately. And the harmony that you found in both being able to maintain the masculine and integrate the feminine when appropriate is such a beautiful balance that so many people tend to stick on one side of the polarity or the other. And like you, just in a separate context. I mean, my father is similar in age to you, and Yeah, I was raised by very typical, mid 1940s stereotypical male. At the absolute stoic, really expresses two predominant emotions, being anger and contentment. And I love my dad to death. And today he's softened a bit on the edges, particularly as he's going through some pretty significant health issues, and has a way of changing a man. And I not just man, I mean that in the royal sense of the word, men and women. But it I went through many of those swings of the pendulum where I went too far into the feminine and too far into the masculine, and finding that harmony between the two is where true strength and power and influence lies in the most positive context, I believe. So I love hearing your perspectives and what guided you there. I mean, what's and like to your point, this is something I think we could talk about for hours because it's such a powerful subject. Now, one thing I would love to ask of you. I mean, for our listeners, I mean, you've shared so much. I can only imagine people listening right now would love to learn more. You mentioned you've written some books, some articles. Where can our listeners find more information on you? I'd love to make sure that I include those in the show notes and allow them to hear that right now.
Well, I tried to put everything that we've been talking about, and I tried to do it with utter honesty into a memoir.
Mhm.
Um, it's called Quest, Quest dash Risk, Adventure, and the Search for Meaning. Get it, order it from a bookstore. It's also an audiobook. I have a website. That's my name, johngraham.org. And then we should talk a little bit about my organization. I've been going for
Yeah.
45 years now with the Giraffe Heroes Project. And
Yes, please.
that's at giraffe.org. It's nothing to do with animals, as you might guess. It's about people sticking their necks out.
Yeah.
Metaphor, giraffe. And by the way,
Hmm.
I did not start it. I wasn't smart or creative enough. My wife, Ann Medlock, started the Giraffe Heroes Project way back in 1982. She was a single mother in New York City and fed up with the fact that every time she looked at the newspaper, it was all gloom and doom, rapes and
Yeah.
pillage and fires and stuff. And she knew there were plenty of people doing good things, very interesting good things, and nobody was talking about them. So she decided she would create her own news service, which was all about telling the stories of heroes. It's sort of like a rival to NBC and CBS, and doing it from her little living room in New York City. Oh, wow. I met her about that time. I didn't think much of it because as far as I was concerned, the world was a big, tough place. And I was at the United Nations, by the way, so I was dealing every day with big, tough problems, poverty, disease, whatever. Because my part of the United Nations was not Western Europe. My part was Africa and Asia, and I had a lot of responsibilities there. Mostly because nobody else in the U.S. government gave a damn about that part of the world. We were totally focused on the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So I had a lot of power and a lot of leeway, and I could do things like helping end apartheid or do other things that were helpful on peace and justice issues at the United Nations. So that's where I really discovered how my toughness and my compassion would work together. And by the way, I'm glad you said that we're talking. I hope we're talking to both men and women. First of all my books and podcasts and blogs and stuff, I find almost to my surprise that my audiences are almost as many women as men, and I think
Hmm.
that's two reasons. One, because women face the same sort of situation and
Hmm.
looking at the male and female parts of themselves. And second of
Hmm.
all, they are so grateful that someone's talking this way to the men in their life who maybe
Hmm.
don't get it or don't get it yet. Maybe like your dad when he was younger. Uh, uh, but so I have a large following, a large bunch of followers who are female,
Mm.
and it's a question of humanity. And I would be the last
Yeah.
person to say that what I'm talking about in terms of finding meaning through your life and meaning through service and giving back is a male thing. Absolutely not. It's just that I happen to be a male and I talk
Yeah.
to a lot of other males and they're a tough audience. I mean, I talk to a lot of business audiences, for example,
Hmm.
and I know who I'm talking to. I get up there and they know I'm running a nonprofit, so it's like, oh man. God, the boss wants me to go to this lecture, or they got this guy for the speaker or their annual meeting. Come on, I want to talk about business. I want to talk about making money. And so I know that. And so if I'm given 45 minutes, I'll spend 35 minutes telling war stories. And man, I have got war stories. Until everybody's looking forward on their seat and they begin to realize that I'm tougher and I've done more stuff than the whole room could have then put together. So they're listening. And so I can pivot, I can segue in the last 5, 10 minutes and say, hey, all this stuff, all this risk-taking stuff, it was great. It's shaped my life. But there's a lot more to life. And I made a U-turn in my life. And I'm putting these same skills and resources to work now doing stuff that actually helps solve big, tough problems. They're not the
Mhm.
big, tough problems of figuring out how to make a motor car cheaper. They're big, tough problems like dealing with the busing and housing issues you got in your town, or other rock the boat issues, whistleblower issues, or maybe climate change or whatever. These are the issues and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I converted. I'll tell you what's wrong. And last thing, 2 minutes to go, I'll say, this is just me, but this isn't every man's story. There's stuff going on in your life. You're in business, fine. You're a neurosurgeon, fine. You're a barber, fine. But you can find ways to be of service in that profession. There, you can find the ways to find the meaning of your life through some kind of service. And that's the last 2 minutes. And by then, I got them. I got my audience. I got them, and I have gotten good responses over the years.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, so this is the core philosophy, and I want the audience to lean in here. I mean, you say it's not the risks you take, but what you take them for.
Mm.
So how do most people misunderstand risk in your mind's eye?
Well, they see risk the same way I saw it when I was a young man. They see risk as physical violence or physical challenges. Climbing mountains is a risk. Skydiving is a risk. Racing a car fast is a risk. Or if you're 16, 17, doing some damn fool thing is a risk that your parents would be mortified if they knew you were doing it.
Hmm.
Those
Hmm.
are the risks. And the risks I'm talking about are way more subtle than that. They're not so much physical risks as, for want of a better word, and you brought it up half an hour ago. They're
Hmm.
spiritual risks. They're the risk of
Hmm.
you're risking your soul. You're risking the deepest part of yourself to look deep into yourself, see the compassion that's necessary. It's something beyond anger. It's something beyond disappointment or whatever. It's a whole new emotion, and it's incredibly powerful, as you pointed out again half an hour ago. And you're absolutely right. These are the risks that are really worth taking. And in my mind, they're just as tough or tougher than hanging on a rope from a mountainside or dodging a bullet or a car bomb. And I urge people to take those risks. And I write books on helping them do it, showing them how to do it, looking at their own skills and resources and seeing some ideas of what they might be doing because they are a barber or a neurosurgeon or a business people. And there are opportunities for them. I'm very careful too, because I speak to a lot of business audiences. I'm very careful to say that I'm not suggesting you shouldn't find risk and you shouldn't find meaning in your business. No, no, no. If you're in business and you're making a good product and you're selling it for a fair price under good labor conditions and you're mindful of the environmental concerns and you're a good neighbor in the communities where your plants and factories operate, well, that's a service and go to work every day seeing that it's a service. It'll change how you do it. It'll change how you deal with your fellow workers. It'll change how you speak up at board meetings. And you won't be
Hmm.
doing anything that much different, perhaps, but you'll see it differently. You'll see what you're doing as a service. Or if you're a barber, for example, well, we all know the stereotypical barber is a good listener. Well, that's a service. Someone comes in deeply troubled to get his haircut or her haircut and you're just a good listener, that's a service.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there are all kinds of ways to use your skills and resources. So part of what I tell people is to take stock of those skills and resources and contacts you've got, because that may help lead you. People come to me all the time, especially in a short form video series I do. Oh yeah, I should say this. I do a short form video series called Badass Granddad, badass, all one word, and granddad with two D's in the middle. And you can find it on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. It's just 3 minutes long. I urge every one of your viewers to at least go listen to a couple of them because I tell adventure stories, but then I do what I do for larger audiences. I segue from that adventure story into some kind of life lesson that might be
Mhm.
useful, a life lesson on courage or perseverance or truth telling or whatever. Anyway, I got off track a little bit there, but I wanted to put that a badass granddad is something I'm very proud of. I got 125,000 followers already in a year, and I guess that's pretty good. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm now
sure
I'm
is.
now a certified influencer. I love it. I thought I thought influencers, Zach, were the young ladies that tell you how to put your nail polish on correctly. And I'm an
Oh, this is
influencer.
awesome.
Yay!
I love this in so many different contexts, John. I mean,
Yeah.
most people at your age, and I hate to even make that statement, but they would be like, TikTok and all this other stuff. I don't know what this stuff is. And you're still out pioneering new ground. I love this in every shape. Now, I want to come back to something you said again, and I'm gonna try to keep this question somewhat focused, and which it's not an easy question actually. It is because the one thing I'm sure you'd agree, each new stage of life, and maybe we break that down as simplistically as each decade of life, there's a new transformation in who we become as individuals. I mean, we have new life experiences. Maybe we get married, maybe we have kids, maybe we start a business, maybe we've worked our way up the food chain within the particular industry that we're in, or maybe people are experiencing, midlife crises or hardships. And what I'm curious about is when you're encouraging and inviting people to take these risks, and so many people, and I would have to suspect, and maybe this is my own convoluted view at this stage, but it is that, and particularly in the midlife where there are the midlife crises and people are struggling to define who they are, and now they start to become more risk averse because many people in my experience, and I've had the opportunity to coach and consult for thousands of business owners across industries in many different contexts, up on stages in front of 20,000 people at a time like you. But I've become a very keen master of pattern recognition. And one thing I frequently see is there's a certain aspect where people become jaded. The life gets challenging, and many people start to receive those challenges as stop signs instead of as opportunities. And I'm a firm believer that every challenge is an opportunity, every problem is a gift when we see it that way. And so much of what I heard in your early storytelling in the beginning is the things that most people were afraid of are the things that you ran toward. And regardless of the reasoning behind it at the moment, it shaped the life and the person that you become and evolved into. But you also had the ability to do something that most people don't. And you took a step back and you were able to stop looking down the scope of the rifle and look at the greater field of play and understand how, what served you at one stage of life didn't necessarily serve the person that you wanted to become in your next stage. So, how do you guide such a, wide depth and breadth of people to step into whatever that unique next level, next power is for them? I mean, what might you say to that? That's not, to me, it's a hard question to ask, so I'm not sure how easy it is to answer.
Hmm. I answer it. I try to answer it every day because I'm asked it every day, and it's a damn good question. I'm going to use a different metaphor to say the same thing. To me, a lot of people shy away from risk, and they don't want to do it, and they got two kids in college and all the other stuff that keeps you from playing it, that keeps you playing it safe. Uh, and then there's all kinds of obstacles and challenges. Well, my feeling is that if you're faced with a serious obstacle and you're not going to and you're not going to take a risk, you're afraid of taking the risk. Well, that's a huge obstacle. It's like a mountain wall in front of you. But
Mhm.
if you look at that action that you're being called to take as something that's meaningful to you, and you're the one that brought this word up, and we should spend a bit more time on it, finding something that's meaningful, that makes your heart sing, that makes you feel complete. Uh, every one of us has got to find that meaning, and we all look for it, and most of us don't look hard enough. But if you can find what's meaningful for your life, and you realize that what you're being called to do, facing that mountain wall of a challenge in front of you, is meaningful to you, then the mountain becomes a speed bump. I mean, I'm not being cavalier here. It really is the same challenge. It's just that
Mhm.
it's different. Because if it's meaningful to you, you sail right through it. You sail over the top. You find a way around the edges. Because if it's meaningful to you, you become you have superpowers, if you will.
Mhm.
So the search for meaning is so, so important. And I want to say this
Mhm.
directly, looking at your viewers. There's
Mhm.
nothing more important in your life than to find what's meaningful in that life. And people have felt that way for millennia. It's hardly a new thought. Uh, and so you need to look at what's meaningful. And yeah, when I was a young man, I found that meaning in physical adventure, and it turned out that was pretty shallow. There wasn't a life learning in that. Other people I know, and many of my friends, they find meaning now, or they think they have, in amassing money or power. And good luck to that. But I suspect that when they reach their senior years, there's something edging, there's something gnawing at them, something they didn't do, something choices that they had didn't make. And I find so many times people in business realizing that money and power are great. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm a capitalist myself. I got money in the stock market. Uh, but what I am saying is that it's not enough. It's not enough. That you can be a big businessman, you can be a billionaire for that matter. But you got to always look at what you're doing with your life as meaningful, and you'll find
Mhm.
that I find not in physical adventuring and not in money and power, but in some kind of service. And again, service is not being Mother Teresa. Service is not sackcloth and ashes. Service is just looking around, seeing what resources you've got. Maybe the resources you've got are your contacts or your money or your position in the company or whatever. Recognize it as a means of service, not as a means of self-aggrandizement. It makes a whole difference in the world. And that's what makes that mountain wall of a challenge in front of you become more of a speed bump because
Mhm.
all of a sudden you've got that superpower that leading a meaningful life gives you. So take that superpower, but spend the
Mhm.
time it takes to find that meaning. It took me years to find that meaning, but I'm a
Mhm.
slow learner. I'm a really
Mhm.
slow learner. You can find that meaning maybe in a quiet walk in the woods or talking with a trusted friend. Or looking up at a starry sky, or you know, I, when I used to do a lot of in-person workshops, or I would give people the red light test. What's the red light test? The red light test is you're in a hurry and all of a sudden you're in an intersection and you miss the green. So you got 60, 70 seconds and you can't do anything. You can't move. And so your fingers are drumming on the steering wheel and you're thinking about, God damn, I gotta be. Just shut your mind off. You got nothing else to do for that 70 seconds. Shut your
Mhm.
mind off and let it drift. Let it drift and see if there's something that pops into your head that couldn't find any room there when all you were thinking about was making that meeting or making that next $1 million or whatever.
Mhm.
And people tell me, yeah, right. It's like a 60-second meditation enforced on you by a red traffic light.
Mhm.
Whatever. I mean, other people find other ways, but all I'm saying is never give up the search for that meaning
Mhm.
until you found it. And you'll know when you found it. You'll know when you found it because your heart sings. And your heart sings in a way that's completely different from having that third house in the Hamptons. It just sings differently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the things that we acquire, but it's the things that we give. I mean, you've said so many things today. I mean, almost the exact language that I use in many different environments. I love, one thing I frequently tell people is comfort is the enemy. If we're coasting, we're going downhill. It's new level, new devil. Everything, all growth happens at the outer edge or outside of our comfort zone. Nothing where things are easy. And just because something is an easy decision doesn't mean the road is going to be easy. But when you have a passion and you have a drive and you have a dream and you have enthusiasm, then obstacles tend to become more surmountable. That, like you said, the stop sign becomes a speed bump, and that's the exact metaphorical language I use frequently. So I love that you said that, John. I mean, one thing I always tell people is it's like, I take ice baths, right? And there's no part of my brain that wants to jump into 35-degree water. I do it, yeah, one for the physiological benefits too, but for the second reason is I've trained my brain not to negotiate with myself. I've trained my nervous system to get calm in one of the most stressful environments quickly, but also because I want to train my brain to run into the things that I'm afraid of because I know that those are the things that more often than not are going to help create the next level life that I want to experience. And one thing I always tell people is, look, your duty is to earn more. The more that you earn, guess what? The more that you have the ability to contribute, the more that you have the ability to give back, and particularly when you do it in a good way. And I love how holistic your view is when you're talking about the environment that you create for your employees. My personal ethos is leaders create more leaders. We have to help the people around us to level up in life. I like that you're talking about the environment literally that we live in. We got one little beautiful blue ball that we're not taking good enough care of in today's world. I mean, your overall ethos is so uh, synchronized. It's just a beautiful way of looking at life, John. I mean, I got to celebrate you in every context. Um, in your mind, I mean, is courage something people are born with, or is it something that's built?
Wow, I think both. I think both, and I think mostly the latter. And by the way, I just want to say this as I was listening to you talking. You've just given a tremendous advertisement for the Giraffe Heroes Project. You'd make a great giraffe, and it would be great to have you on our staff. We've been doing this for 42 years, telling the stories of heroes. We've now found over 2,000 of these people. And again, I urge your viewers to go to our website, and the stories are all there in a story bank. But these people are exactly what you're talking about. They're people that are taking risks, and they're taking risks because it's the right thing to do, because it provides meaning to their lives, and they're helping a whole lot of people. They're exactly what we're talking about. So again, giraffe.org. I urge your viewers to take a look. Um,
Absolutely.
so, oh, what was the last question you asked me?
Just if courage is something that people are born with, or if it's something that is built, you know?
I think we're all born with the capacity for courage. I think we're
Hmm.
all born with a natural thirst for meaning in our lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you can lose those just by doing the opposite until you're inured and you don't even recognize that there's an alternative.
Hmm.
Uh, but to me, I never did get around to telling the story, but that battle in Vietnam was
Yes.
a comeuppance for me. I mean, I realized in the middle of this battle how shallow my life had become. I just ordered the mayor of the city where I was the advisor to set up a firing squad to start shooting deserters from the South Vietnamese army because the deserters were terrorizing the population of the city where I was the advisor. Way on the northern part of South Vietnam, only 50 miles south of the DMZ. And we were under siege. The North Vietnamese army was only 6 miles away. We were about to get overrun, and these damn deserters were making things really difficult to fight. And so set up a firing squad, and I just realized in that instant, here I was, my home was 7,000 miles away. I didn't give a damn about the war. I really didn't. I didn't go over there as a patriot. I went over there as an adrenaline junkie, and the only thing that mattered to me was that risk. And every day over there for a year and a half was I thought would be my last because it was so damn dangerous. Uh, but I did it, and then all of a sudden I realized that thrill, especially when there were lives being lost because of it, uh, was not the way I could live my life anymore. And like I say, my home was a long ways away. I didn't give a damn about the war. Well, I got out of that. U.S. fighter bombers saved my life by waiting for the skies to clear and then blasting the North Vietnamese tanks that were just 6 miles away. Uh, so I got out of that one and came to California, where I think I picked up the story 20 minutes ago on those encounter groups, and I found that meaning. I was forced to search for that meaning, when I did so, I found the courage not to face bullets and bombs, but the courage to take, if you will, using that word, spiritual risk. And for me, those spiritual risks were about being compassionate, about forming honest friendships, about leading not out of fear, but out of service. All those things that I know that you talk about a lot in all of your work. All of that stuff was new to me. And so I had to learn a whole new way of being. It took years. I did 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It took years. But I found myself at the UN, like I was saying earlier. And that was the perfect place for me because it had all these peace and justice issues where I could apply this new way of being. Finally, I got so enthused by what I was doing, so totally hooked on this level of meaning that I had to quit the Foreign Service because they were moving way too slow. And not only that, all they cared about was the Cold War, and they didn't realize how important the lives of 2 or 3 billion people who were black and brown in Africa and Asia, how important they were. And so I couldn't do it anymore. So I left at about that time. I met Ann Medlock, who, as I said, had started the Giraffe Heroes Project. The two of us have worked together on it now for 44 years. And we're doing the same thing, telling the stories of heroes. We've created a curriculum for school kids. Between the two of us, we've written a bunch of books. We're on blogs and podcasts and all the rest of it. And we're not quitting. Ann's even older than I am. So we're both old as dirt. But why should we quit? We're having too much fun. That's something else. We haven't talked about fun. We haven't talked about fun. Meaning is not like, oh, I got to find the meaning of my life. If you find the meaning of your life, you're going to laugh your way to it when you find it, because it's just so damn pleasurable. A lot more pleasurable, I think, than an ice bath. Oh, I shudder when you.
Hey, I feel great and very stimulated afterwards. But I love
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
I love that you bring it back to fun, John. I mean, and it's I want to relate it to this to something in my past life. So I mean, I started out in the health and wellness industry. I took over a family business when I was very young. And anyway, long story short, I moved, expand, diversified to incorporate boutique personal training studios. And one pattern that I observed early on was, I worked with a lot of affluent individuals, some that were more midlife, some that were encroaching on retirement, and many that then went well beyond retirement. And one pattern that I observed early on is it was the individuals who kept both their minds and bodies active, that continued to not only live a much they continue to thrive not only in their quality of life but in the same type of energy and exuberance and passion that you show up with. And I love that. And to me, it's the difference between I watched my grandfather. I just kind of sit and waste away in his rocking chair in his latter years, and it was so painful to watch. And it was a decision that I made when I was very young, that regardless of what life challenges threw my way, I would not die in a rocking chair. I would be sprinting to the grave. And I love that you're doing it from a place of just joy, and also pursuing something that gives such tremendous meaning, all while making the world a better place. I mean, you know, as we wrap up today's episode, I mean, how can someone begin aligning their life with something bigger than themselves? I mean, I've found that in many instances so many people can't get out of their own narrative where they're going, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and I'm like, stop hypnotizing yourself to your own bullshit. It doesn't matter. Cut that story out. Pick something, start pursuing it, and that vehicle will, 9 times out of 10, if it's not the thing, it'll at least lead to something else. And it sounds like the draft project could be a really great opportunity. I mean, how could someone in your mind begin aligning themselves with something bigger now and then let it evolve?
Well, you've already given them some clues. You look at who you
Hmm.
are. I mean, you look at who you are. If you're really good with numbers, for example, then maybe you do some volunteer work, helping your city figure out bus routes or financing low income housing or whatever.
Hmm.
If you're good with music, maybe it's just playing the music and bringing that kind of pleasure to people. That's a service. You look for what creates the meaning in your life, and I can't tell any one individual what that is.
Sure.
All I'm
Hmm.
saying is that when you're there, you know it.
Hmm.
And if you
Yeah.
can't, if you're still having like, oh, is this I can't do that, whatever, then you're not there. You haven't found
Yeah.
what's meaningful. And I guarantee you that for millennia, people have discovered that that's the one true search in life is the search for meaning. And you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes looking for it. I know I sure did with my thirst for violence and physical adventure. Uh, but there are all kinds of other ways. And again, take stock of the physical characteristics that you've got, because, like you said, it's a way of pointing you, perhaps suggesting to you something you might be doing, either in the middle of your current profession or doing it as a volunteer or doing it differently. So
Mhm.
that's that, and just don't stop, and don't get discouraged. Have some friends to talk to, and bounce ideas off them if you trust them enough. And see if they can. Oh well, gee, John, you've always been had a thirst for the environment, for example. Well, maybe it's something out there in the environment. I know I gave a big deal speech to a white shoe law firm in Seattle a long time ago. I get this polite of cause. I'm saying my normal speech about meaning and vision, service, and 2 years after that, I get this letter from a guy who was a senior vice president, and he was in the room that day, and he never said a word to me at the time. But he says, I did listen. I did listen to what you said, and I realized that defending some of the people I was defending, or making money for some of the people I was making money for, and making a lot of money myself, it wasn't enough. And I just felt uncomfortable about that. And I've always been an outdoors person, and it's mostly been summer hikes with my kids. Well, right now, I'm the leader of an environmental group, a nonprofit that I myself started a year and a half ago. And we're down here in Northern California, and we're working to save the remaining groves of redwoods. That's what I'm doing with my life. Now, I don't expect people to stop being a senior partner in a white shoe law firm and go out and start a nonprofit saving redwoods in California. No, I don't expect that. I'm just saying that as an extreme. You start
Mhm.
looking for meaning, and man, it'll take you in some weird places, and you light up. You light up when you find it.
No, it's so true. I mean, what I find fascinating is so many people tend to get an idea, whether it's the celebrities or friends of influence or people that, excel in some area that they don't. The mathematician wants to become the speaker, and they're typically reclusive and they love numbers, but they respect the ability that individual to get up on stage in front of thousands of people and influence. And I'm like, lean into your strength, lean into your superpower. You don't need to try to be somebody else. Bring out the thing that you're already good at and find a way to integrate that into something, or create something where that is your superpower. I mean, you talk so much about that. I mean, John, you've lived an extraordinary life, filled with risk and service and impact. I mean, if someone listening today remembers just one idea from this conversation from years from now, what would you want that idea to be?
Never give up the search for meaning in your life. Never.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. And I don't think it, I don't think, I think that's something that is a constant and perpetual and beautiful pursuit. Well, John, was absolutely a tremendously powerful conversation. I mean, what stands out most about this conversation is a simple but confronting idea. Most people aren't lacking opportunity. They're avoiding responsibility. They're avoiding risk. They're avoiding action. They're avoiding the very things that would give their life meaning. And your life is a great reminder of that. Courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about acting in spite of fear for something that matters. And thank you for sharing your experiences and your perspectives. And to everyone listening, if this episode challenged you, that's the point. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, follow the show, and remember, growth isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you become along the way. John, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Perpetual Growth Podcast.